release date to tectonic plates. Dutch Sense and Tattoo take the temperature of tyranny on Freedom Frequency 1871. Coming to you live now.
This is America. We have a founding fathers that wrote a constitution that we haven't lived by in 142 years.
Were they serious when they said they planned on owning the weather by 2025?
And if you're not pissed off, there's something wrong with you right now.
I mean, have you guys seen what's going on outside your door lately? Need I remind you?
This is America. Are y'all going to allow it to be Russia?
Now, we're going to go to break. When we get back, I'm going to wrap up this first part, and we'll hopefully be able to take some callers.
doTERRA Essential Oils, true gifts of the earth, provide you with the perfect prepper tool, the Family Physician Kit. 10 certified pure therapeutic grade oils to provide the support you need for your family's wellness goals when sheltering in place or bugging out. Visit essentialnewparadigm.info and ask how you can receive $100 in free product and 25% off each and every order. Don't delay. Your family's health depends on you. Health depends on you.
Thanks for listening to FPRN. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to start your own show with FPRN, advertise with us, or donate to the network or to your favorite shows, check out our website at www.fprnradio.com.
Welcome back to Freedom Frequency 1871. This is Dutch Sense. It is 9:05 p.m. Eastern Time on February 14th, 2014, and I want to thank you guys for hanging in there and listening to me talk for almost an hour straight now on the topic of weather modification, specifically directed energy weapons and their applications, from everything from destroying objects to manipulating the weather. And we were just talking about, before the break, the U.S. Navy doing a series of experiments at the start of 2013. And I don't know if the producer is showing this all to you on there. Again, for the people who are not seeing this, I will describe it to you. We are talking about a large ring, circular-shaped sphere of plasma being generated by HAARP in 2013 by the U.S. Navy, heated to multiple thousands of degrees and sustained for over an hour and controlled. This is their own words, done by HAARP. And this is at the time where everybody was saying HAARP's closed, remember? Tat and I got very, very frustrated trying to explain to everyone that HAARP is not closed. The only thing that's closed is the website. And that's because they most likely don't want you to see what the effects of controlling flames at a ground level are using radio frequency. Now, directly below that post that I was just talking about, the post was called "The U.S. Navy Labs Create Plasma Spheres Rings." Below that is another post where they, in 1975, NASA and JPL used a radar to transmit power wirelessly. The Tesla experiment. The same thing that Tesla was talking about doing in the late 1800s was recreated by NASA in 75, and it was a success. They were able to transmit power wirelessly with no wires from a dish to a receiving rectenna, and a rectenna is a square, usually a square, array of receiving small antennas that are fed into usually a tube, where the tube then converts it to power. So you can imagine a tube in an old TV set, just to give you an example of what a tube looks like. You can imagine it lighting up on the inside, the gases on the inside lighting up, producing electricity. And so they're able to excite the gases on the inside of a tube using high-powered microwaves. And here's what they did with the experiment, guys, to put this in perspective. Somebody was asking in the chat room just a few minutes ago about their wireless headset at 2.45 gigahertz. Let me tell you guys, they transmitted power in 1975, 2.45 gigahertz, at 500,000 watts using a radar dish across a mile and a half almost across a valley to light up lights on the other valley peak. 2.45 gigahertz is what's running in my microwave in my kitchen. 1.9 gigahertz is running on everybody's cell phone. And now the new smartphones are going up into that range as well, especially with Bluetooth. So you're asking if 2.45 gigahertz is harmful. Yes. It's all a matter, though, of the power behind the 2.45 gigahertz. 2.45 gigahertz low over a long period of time is the same exposure rate as 2.45 gigahertz, one big blast from you. Let's say if you stood in front of one of these big transmitters, you'd get cooked and you might die. That's because you're getting a 500,000 watt blast all at once. But imagine if you were exposed to the same 500,000 watts over the course of 100,000 hours of carrying your cell phone around with you. So what they found, and we already all know this, there's zoning laws having to deal with this. An antenna that's built for your cell phone, like the big towers that are being built, should not be built directly next to people's houses. Same with the big microwave towers. They have to have them a certain distance. Same with the power lines. We're talking about transmission of power producing ionization, which then is the ions are stripped. Just like Michio Kaku talking about a laser stripping it from the air, we're talking about the same process happening through radio frequency. So is it harmful? Yes. And I would venture a guess that if you have a 2.45 gigahertz router, Wi-Fi router, like I do in my house, or Tat does at his house, or if you have a Bluetooth headset, or if you're talking on your cell phone, or if you're having a tower built next to you, we could all be part of this contributing problem of radio frequency pollution overall. What if the NEXRAD radar that we're seeing pulse at 2.45 gigahertz is actually not pulsing at 2.45 gigahertz, it's just normally operating. But there's an influx of everybody with their Wi-Fi routers at 2.45. What if it's having an accumulation effect that they're not counting or expecting? And that then caused tornadoes to come directly in to the most powerful microwave source in town, and it goes right to the center like going down a toilet bowl, because you have a swirling mass of frequency pollution. I don't know. These are things that have to be studied. For the longest time, it was denied. Now it's being admitted. Ionization occurs, literally the stripping of the particles of energy occurs at a distance from a transmitter. Now this goes back to 1985. 1980s, Thomas Bearden, Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Bearden, giving conferences saying the Russians have full capability to generate weather and earthquakes over the United States, set off volcanoes remotely. Same thing that William Cohen said in the 90s. Thomas Bearden said in the 80s. And Thomas Bearden literally coined the term scalar. Now, let me explain something. We have scalar in mathematics, and then we have Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Bearden's scalar. They are overlapping terms. The best way I can describe Thomas Bearden's summary of scalar is that he said energy could be generated at a distance using two transmitters. So let's say, and he would draw on two diagrams of two radar dishes, just like we're talking about here, transmitting power. Two radar dishes pointing in a certain direction. Where their streams cross, there is a space that's called a scalar integer. He called this a scalar integer. And it's a 0-point vector. I'm getting very technical here. But what that means is that he says energy can appear at a distance out of nowhere. Now, that directly flies in the face of the square inverse law that says that as something travels out from the distance, let's say let's say I'm talking to you on a CB radio, okay, or on a handheld walkie-talkie, it's an even better example, and you're a mile away. You could barely hear me. But if you're down at the bottom of the street, crystal clear. Okay, square inverse is taking care of that the energy travels out over distance and spreads out into a little wave, and then it goes out into nothing, supposedly. However, I would propose that square inverse does not apply when you're targeting two beams at an area to have an effect, a power effect, and that if the stripping and plasma generation is occurring, and they did it in 2013 at a distance from HAARP, they proved that it can happen, that it can be done. Square inverse doesn't apply when you're applying radio frequency at a distance, apparently. That's a new discovery. And so if we go down my post here now, and again, the producer is going to have to scroll down here, there's a whole mess of YouTube videos, okay? As you scroll down, we'll get past the wireless power transmission, And you'll see several YouTube videos if you're following along on the post. We're not going to watch any of these, but there's a good 7 or 8 YouTube videos that you guys can watch regarding HAARP in the mainstream media. And again, them explaining how these processes occur. Once you get past the YouTube videos, there is something that I sent a picture to the producer in our private chat here saying, can you show this when I tell you? This is a picture, and let me know when it's up, guys. Okay, this is a picture that is phenomenal. This is 2 years, 3 years worth of waiting for this to come across, okay? And what you're seeing, and again for the people who are listening, I will describe it to you. On the left-hand side, we have a diagram from HAARP. This is from the U.S. Navy. And there's 2 different types of pictures. There's black and white photos and then 3D representations on the left-hand side. The black and white photos are actual pictures taken by the U.S. Naval Research Labs of the plasma bubble rings as they appeared in the upper atmosphere. And that's their words, upper atmosphere, not the ionosphere, upper atmosphere. And again, this is going to be your missile defense shield, let's say, or your weather mod generator. Now, you'll see 2 different color representations. In the upper left-hand corner, there is red circle. It's a rainbow spectrum. It goes from red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and it stops at purple at the center. It's 3D. It's in the shape of a ring. Now, on the right-hand side, there's a massive red ring, and it's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. But this isn't coming from HAARP. This is a NEXRAD radar station in Minot, North Dakota at the Air Force Base. What do we have here? We have a NEXRAD radar station producing the same pulse, literally color-coded the exact same, in the same shape and representation that HAARP shows. Now, why is that occurring? How are they able to do that with radar? How is radar at 2 gigahertz able to mimic the same signal that we're seeing at HAARP? Wouldn't that also mean that plasma is being generated above this radar station? If they match? Well, here's what's happening. When radar pulses, it doesn't pulse at the 2 gigahertz range. It pulses in the single megahertz range, just like HAARP. HAARP operating 0 to 10 megahertz. Radar pulsing 0 to 19 megahertz. They overlap the same spectrum bandwidth in the pulse mode only, guys. Now, there's a lot of people, radar professionals, probably listening to say, oh, radar only operates at 2 gigahertz. No. Go look up where it pulses. If it's an urban environment, it's pulsing at about 11 megahertz, I think. And I'm going from memory here. And in a non-urban environment, 19.6 megahertz. So we're talking about the same bandwidth here, guys. And look at the 3D representation. It is the exact same, only over a smaller distance. You see, this is multiple kilometers wide up in space on the left from HAARP. And on the right, it's about 500 miles wide, but it's on the ground level going up towards. So we've got one coming down from space or reflected up in the atmosphere, and another one coming from a ground-based source. What this proves is that radar and HAARP overlap in their capabilities, especially our NEXRADs. And we've got at least 2 per state all across the country. And this leads me nicely back into Owning the Weather 2025. My original discovery with the radar pulses and HAARP rings with tornadoes coming to the center of them, the creation of tornadoes using microwaves, the heating of the atmosphere using a pulse mode that matches HAARP. HAARP doing experiments in Alaska to control fire and lightning at a ground level. And this is all currently happening now, 2013,
Have you
2014.
also noticed that mainstream media, television, when they showing you the weather maps, they don't show you the live feeds anymore as much as they used to. They'll show you when they can, but if there's something going on, they don't show it as much as they used to. They don't in my state anyway.
Futurecast. They're showing here in St. Louis over and over again. They're showing Futurecast, which is just a computer representation of what the precipitation is going to look like.
Exactly.
That is, suspect. Or now the other great thing is you'll see the weatherman who will hide what they're doing. They'll speed up the feed. If there's a big pulse that's happening, I've seen this time and time again on Weather Channel and here locally. If there's a big pulse happening, then they speed up the feed almost to the point where you can't even see the storm go by. It goes by so quick. Now, producer, I just put a picture in here. It's another picture you can click on. And this is an example of a radar pulse that appeared real time on January 20th of 2013. Exactly almost a year ago, just a little over 13 months ago, this appeared out of Nebraska. The skeptics said this was birds and bugs. Now, there's one problem with that being birds and bugs. It would be every bird and bug on the entire planet, and it's in the middle of winter in Nebraska. So the skepticism that we were met with at the time was ridiculous, and that even crept up into 2013, right up until Michio Kaku got up and started to confirm what we were seeing. But to describe this to the viewer, again, we're looking at a massive circular-shaped ring that's color-coded, going down to more powerful at the center and louder, if you will, because they're talking about measuring radar in decibels of Z. Decibels of Z is a way to refer to the loudness of something. We can't hear it, of course, it's beyond our hearing. But if you could hear it, it would be varying degrees of loudness going up through the radio frequency spectrum or down through the radio frequency spectrum. Now, further down my post, and I don't know if I've lost the producer on here, but I can just describe some of these things to you. In my post, there are a few companies that are operating today out of Texas. Let's say there's one that uses radio frequency resonance technology to steer atmospheric currents, to steer the jet stream from areas that are dry or areas that are wet to areas that are dry. And the company is called Aquies, Aquiess. And their project started on the 16th of April in 2012. So relatively recent. And let me read this to you. This is their description. They're being paid by the state of Texas to do this. And, quote, over the past 10 years, the company, Aquies, has repeatedly demonstrated this technology to government and humanitarian observer groups. The proprietary weather modification system operates by utilizing resonance signals to divert oceanic atmospheric rivers into areas experiencing severe drought. The Aquies system does not rely on chemical or biologically hazardous materials, which could potentially harm the environment. Resonance technology, again, stripping of particles from the atmosphere, building into water molecules that then rain down. And it's all done without using any chemical process. No more chemtrails, no more cloud seeding. That they can do it without seeding the clouds. How are they able to do it without seeding the clouds? The American Meteorological Society, of all things, had a conference on the topic of creating rain using electricity. And the idea was simple: to have a generator that puts a current, a DC current, through a series of wires that are spread out like a little antenna array over a course of maybe a couple hundred feet, and one center pole holding all the wires up like a circus top, and put the DC current through the wires, and ions begin to strip off, just like we're talking about with Michio Kaku with the high-powered lasers, but they're free-floating, they're ambient. It just happens. It's natural with an exposed wire and a DC current passing through it. And they call this ionization stations. The Mexican government has built a series of ionization stations across the country that generate huge amounts of precipitation. They have a map in the PDF from the American Meteorological Society describing where the stations are, how they work, and why we need to do these experiments ourselves. They did the experiments in Laredo, Texas. Again, stripping of ions from the atmosphere using electricity. Now, they use this technology, this ionization technology, using these things that look like upside-down cell phone towers. They look like umbrellas. And they're giant poles with a little antenna array, usually 6 to 8 antennas off each side. And they pass electricity through these towers. They made it rain over 50 times in the desert in Saudi Arabia Abu Dhabi is, you guys can look this up. Look up ionization technology, and you will find a series of PDFs and documents going back several years where they have demonstrated this technology over and over and over again. It's all a matter of whether you're going to use a tower to do it. Are you going to use a high-powered microwave to do it? Are you going to use a high-powered laser to do it? And someday they'll have a gamma ray laser that will do it. It'll be able to do it from 10,000 miles away, like Ming the Merciless. Now, I digress on this because, when we get into what's the capability, if you go back to Flash Gordon in the 1970s, there he is, Ming the Merciless, setting off volcanoes remotely, sending down hail out of the sky, burning hail. It sounded like a joke then. But here we are, the U.S. military with full capability. We're almost to 2025, guys. We are 11 years away. 11 years away from being fully capable of controlling the weather, according to their own words.
You sure? Or
well,
is that just a lie, another lie they're telling us, and they're already there?
Well, I didn't know they had high-powered lasers in the 1960s capable of generating weather phenomenon, but according to Michio Kaku and ABC News, they did. And that shoots a hole in everything because we were just told that the high-powered laser technology has been developed recently. And if that's the case, then we are being lied to 100% on everything that they're capable of. Now, I would propose if they're capable of generating a plasma ball in the atmosphere and extend it for multiple hours and move it around, that missiles are a thing of the past. I don't ever want to hear about the threat of a nuclear war ever again because we have the capability to melt the missiles as they're incoming. And now, in the next year, according to the U.S. Army, next 2 years, they're going to have the capability to melt bullets. Now, you know what that means, guys. Once they're able to melt bullets, no one will be able to oppose the United States military. Not that you'd want to. But what if that got into the hands of somebody that we didn't like, or criminal, or another country? All of a sudden, guns have become irrelevant, and they have. Projectile weapons have become relatively irrelevant because they have the capability to shoot down missiles now. They have the capability to melt incoming mortars. It's on my website, U.S. Army, bragging about it. It's on the back of a truck. There it is. You can go watch the experiments. So once they can melt your bullets, a gun becomes irrelevant. We're at a point in history, just like in the past, when, let's say, they developed armor-piercing arrows, the longbow, or when guns first came on the scene.
We got about 3 minutes to break.
Okay, perfect. This is perfect timing because we're going to go into callers finally, guys. Next week, since we've only got 30 minutes left in the show, next week, we're going to go more in depth into this. Obviously, I didn't even get through the first page on my post. We're nearing the bottom, and this leads us into cloud seeding, aluminum, barium, all the things that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks when it comes to all the fake snow on YouTube. That there are current weather modification activities taking place that have been admitted that are going to be going away. That we're going to see a turn away from the use of introduction of chemicals into the atmosphere, and they're going to be moving to this next generation technology. Why would you spend millions of dollars to spray when you can create the same ionization using a tower or using a transmitter? Now, the denial, I do not want to ever hear the denial again. This Dutch's HAARP rings has to stop because it would be now the U.S. Air Force HAARP rings, because I showed you the PDF at the start of this broadcast where they're calling them rings from HAARP, and that they're a topic of study going forward into 2017. And I don't want to ever hear that high-powered microwaves don't have a weather control effect, because the laboratory experiments have already been done by Dr. Slobodan Tepic over in Switzerland, or by the U.S. military, or CNN talking about it in 1985, or Michio Kaku talking about it in 2013. The days of denial on weather modification are over. Now it's just a matter of, are they going to follow through with all the different capabilities that they were looking to develop? And again, let me read some of these capabilities to you just so we can understand what they're talking about using HAARP for. Precipitation enhancement, storm enhancement, precipitation denial, space weather influence, fog and cloud removal, detect hostile weather activities. What do you mean detect hostile weather activities? Doesn't that mean somebody else has the capability to generate hostile weather? Precipitation avoidance, storm modification, again, space weather, cloud and fog generation. That's my favorite, that they want to be able to move fog on and off an airfield at a moment's notice. I mean, why even bother? I mean, they've got radar to look through fog and infrared. But that's one capability they want to do. Or how about this? Setting off volcanoes and earthquakes remotely. Think about that. That's their claim, not mine. We'll be right back, guys.